Let's join our European football expert, Kev Hatchard, to talk about all of these developments, all of these vacancies in the dugouts across the continent. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening, gents. How are we?
Yeah, good.
Very, very well. Listen, we were originally meant to be talking about Bayern Munich's hunt for a new manager, but maybe these two roles will intertwine because a lot of the fans calling us this evening, the Chelsea supporters, feel like Thomas Tuchel is the man that they want to return to the dugout at Stamford Bridge. And when this news was announced, I immediately thought Mauricio Pochettino will probably be a candidate for Bayern Munich. Do either of those two things seem probable or likely in your view?
I think there's a lot of fans that would like Tuchel to go back there. I think that's clear. I think there were a lot of fans that didn't want him to go in the first place. So I can understand why there's still a warmth towards him. Of course, he won the Champions League with them, which is a huge achievement. And I think there was a feeling that it was harsh when he went. But of course, what we don't know is what kind of ructions there were behind the scenes between the owners and Thomas Tuchel. It may well be that that wasn't working, in terms of their relationship. And I don't see how that would have necessarily changed. We do know that he's very keen on a return to the Premier League. I can understand why he's being linked with the move to Manchester United. I think what we know about Tuchel, though, by now is, A, he's an elite coach. Absolutely. Tactically, he's spot on. But he also does fall out with people, and he is, box office, and he is somebody that's happy to quite openly criticize players and bosses in public. So I think it's really interesting to see what he does next. Chelsea certainly won't be short of people they can approach. I think it's really interesting that Hansi Flick has already in German media been linked with that Chelsea vacancy. But I think just in general, Chelsea have to decide what they want. They have to decide what they actually want this to be. Is it going to be a project where you give it time? Or is it going to be something where you've spent a huge amount of money on a lot of young players, chuck them all together and are just hoping that you're going to get a title contending team out of it? So I think they've got some big decisions to make, and that's true of Bayern as well. I'm sure a coach of Pochettino's quality will be of interest to them. But I think what we've seen from Bayern's conduct in the last couple of weeks is that there isn't a clear profile of what they want. It's just good coach. In inverted commas, that's all they want. There's no clear playing style they're after. There's no clear skill set they seem to be after. They're just kind of lurching from one name to the next.
One of the names that has been linked is Sebastian Hoeneß, who's finished second in the Bundesliga this year with Stuttgart. Would he be someone that you think could be a success at Chelsea?
I think he could be, but I would think it's extremely unlikely. He's signed a new deal with Stuttgart. He's talked openly and repeatedly about wanting to lead them into the Champions League for next season, which he will do. I would also have slight reservations as well about him going to a club of that size and expectation, because I still believe Hoeneß is developing as a coach. I think he's super smart, really, really clever guy. But there's a feeling that he's very, very good with young players. We know that. But expectation is a different thing. With Stuttgart, when he went in there, it's a big club, no doubt about it, but they were on the cusp of relegation when he took them over. And he's now managed to completely exceed expectations by leading them to second spot. Chelsea's a totally different ballgame.
Obviously, there's the situation in Italy with Juventus and possibly AC Milan, but also with the Euros, you're then not sure what's going to happen with managers after that competition. So, I mean, do you think Chelsea might move quickly, or do you think they'll wait because of who's available now, but who might be available after the Euros?
I think the difficulty is that what you don't want is to be playing catch-up. So if they want to make signings, obviously the owners will have their own ideas. They've got a couple of sporting directors there. So, there's certainly people who'll drive that transfer policy. But do you want somebody coming in after the Euros and kind of playing catch up in terms of prepping for the new season? So the coaching market's really interesting at the moment. As you've mentioned, Milan looking for somebody, Juventus looking for somebody, although the feeling is Thiago Motta's very high on their list. And so there are twists and turns. We thought Ruben Amorim was going to leave Sporting. We thought that was nailed on, but he's made noises that he's going to stay for at least one more season. Roger Schmidt is another one at Benfica. Looked as though he might be of interest to Bayern, and he seems to want to stay at Benfica. So we've already had lots of twists and turns in this market already.
Let me ask you about Bayern Munich and their search for a new manager more widely. I'm not sure Pochettino would have necessarily been on their list before today. Maybe he will join that list, but they have had some issues. The fact that they were even discussing with Thomas Tuchel the chance of staying, having announced that he was going to leave, suggests that something isn't quite right with their search at the moment. How is it going from your perspective? Do you think we're any closer to knowing who might be taking over?
I think we're getting there because they're getting towards the end of their list. Because if you look at what they've done so far, look, my feeling is with Bayern that they bet the farm on trying to get Xabi Alonso and it didn't work out. And I think once it was clear that he wasn't going to go, and that was clear for a while, I think, that they were then a bit unbalanced with it. They spoke to Julian Nagelsmann, but it became clear that that wasn't going to happen. I can understand why he's still wounded from what happened first time around, although the people that sacked him are no longer there. The Ralf Rangnick thing, I think, was the biggest cut for them, actually, reputation-wise, because they were talking very, very positively about him. It looked as though it was done, only for him to make this statement and say, look, I've decided to stay with Austria, and it's not a decision against Bayern, but it's just one for my job with Austria. But I think that was a big blow to them. The issue with Bayern as well that you have is that everything's public. You know, there are lots of journalists who follow Bayern. There are lots of journalists who have lots of sources within Bayern. And so you get this constant drip, drip, drip of who's the top candidate, who are they looking at, who are they going for? And it's just impossible to have any kind of clandestine operation where you're kind of focused on the guys that you want. The latest name that's being linked is Kompany. And when I first heard that, I thought that seems quite a strange idea. The more I've thought about it, the more it makes sense. In the sense that he's played in Germany, he's worked for Guardiola, he's got really good language skills. That's important at Bayern. I think his playing career would be enough to convince some of the big egos in that dressing room that he's worthy of respect. And I think he's got some interesting ideas and has developed young players. So there's a lot of boxes that get ticked by Kompany, but it would be a massive risk, no doubt.
Are we likely to see Hansi Flick back at any of these huge jobs?
Well, Bayern's been discussed because, again, the guy that he fell out with, really, Hasan Salihamidzic, before he left last time, is no longer there. And I think Flick still has a lot of respect from some of the players there because of what he did in what was a relatively short spell at Bayern. He won everything there was to win, including that Champions League in 2020. But the one thing that's damaged him is his spell with Germany, because not only did they go out in the group stage in Qatar, there was this documentary that followed the squad and he didn't come out of it particularly well. So that, I think, has done some damage to his reputation. He keeps being linked with a return to Bayern, but there doesn't seem to have been any progress with it or anything like that. He was linked with Barcelona. Well, that now might be a live runner because it looks like Xabi could be on his way. And he's been linked with the Chelsea job. I still think he's a very talented coach. I think if you look at what he did with Bayern, it was very, very successful. But again, you know, there's an element of risk there.
Bild Sport reporting that Thomas Frank of Brentford has been under consideration for the job as well after securing a fourth season in the Premier League with Brentford this year. Is that anything that you believe it has truth?
I mean, it's a name that's been linked. It's been linked for a little while. I think he is being looked at by top clubs because you look at his ability to drag absolutely everything out of the squad that he has. You look at his longevity. You look at the fact that he's very much a talent developer. I mean, he will tell you that, you know, that's his background in being able to take players who are good and make them very, very good. But again, it's a big leap. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's on their list. Whether he's top of their list, that's another matter entirely. But I can absolutely see why he would be.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.